Run Pure Sports, baby. We're live to welcome in everyone here watching me and Dan break down this UFC Macau. I said Macau card here. 3 a.m. lock time, by the way. Just throwing that out there. So it's not 3 p.m. Don't look at it and give a quick glance and be like, oh, 3 p.m. Not bad. Nope. It is 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is lock. So set your alarm clocks if you're going to. I know Dan's probably just going to pull an all-nighter, stay up until lock of the fights to make sure there's no funny business, and then maybe take a quick nap before. I will not. I used to get up at 4 a.m. every fucking day for work. So 3 a.m., what the fuck's 3 a.m.? I can get up at 3 a.m. or 2:50, let's say, to make sure there's no funny business before lock, seeing as last week I got fucking Weidman on my main team, which crushed me because I had such a good team. I was telling Dan this earlier. I had such a good team going and just had Chris Weidman in it, so that fucking sucked. But either way, the process was good, Dan. Nothing I can do about a fight that gets scratched like a minute before lock. So how you doing here on this Friday afternoon?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, I will probably stay up until 3 a.m. And then I'll be going to sleep. Hopefully I'll wake up for the main event, but I'm not going to kill myself to wake up to watch this card. Mainly because I have plans for Saturday night. So I can't be pulling an all-nighter, unfortunately.
Alex Burner says just keep drinking and then eat a vegan burger and you'll be good.
I could try that. I won't be drinking. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. All
right, drink warm water with me then. We'll drink warm water up until lock.
My plan is to go to sleep, but also, I don't know how well that's going to work out because I'll know that fights are on and I'm a degenerate and I probably just won't be able to sleep. We'll see how it goes. I'm very non-committal.
The one thing about this card, even though I'm so pissed that one, it locks at 3 a.m. and two, they totally fucked me with this card because I got to pronounce all these names. And I'm just telling you right now, guys, it's probably not going to happen. We're going to get like half of the names for every fighter, and you can just deal with it and figure it out, except for maybe a couple where there's like multiple Jans and I don't want to screw it up. So I'm going to have to pronounce the full names there. But like everyone else, you're getting the last name most of the time, and you're just going to have to suck it up because this is bullshit. I got to pronounce all these names on one fucking card. Dana's got to do a better job of spreading it out for me so I don't have to fucking work so hard to pronounce these names and get ready. I didn't go in front of a mirror and practice or anything like that. But, I did make sure to run through the card real quick to just try and get the names down. So we know I'm going to end up butchering like, what do you think, Dan? 90% of the names, or do you think I go under 90?
Oh, 90% for sure. I've been looking forward to this all week. I looked at the names on this card and I was like, I cannot wait for JSU to have to pronounce this shit.
Bullshit.
I mean, you're 1 for 1. You got Macau, which I'm impressed.
I'm gonna surprise you guys. I'm just gonna say it right now. I think I'm gonna be under 90%, but it's not going to be like, under 50% or anything. At least half the card I'm butchering, like 100% I'm going to butcher. So just be ready for that. I can't stop it. But the one thing about this card I will say, Dan, is this is going to separate the men from the boys, the true degenerates from the, just the normal casual gamblers or MMA fans. This is going to separate it here. Who's going to actually wake up for this 3 a.m. card? I'll be in the Discord just so people know that I'm there. So if anyone is deciding they want to wake up and hang out and watch the fights and they're in our Discord, I will be in Discord all day. Our guy Big T said it might be his first card since before COVID that he is not going to end up watching.
Casual.
And I just call him a casual. I just called him. On top of it, he hates The Office, which is just another horrible take, which I don't even understand. Like he calls it corny. Like I can't do it with Big T with some of his. That's up there with the dog take. The dog take and then the office take are like 1, 2.
What's the dog take?
He's not a fan of dogs. He was never a fan of dogs. And he has a dog now, but like it's for his family, obviously. But like he was never a fan of dogs. He always talked about like, I don't want a fucking dog. I don't like dogs, blah, blah, blah. And now he has a dog. Yeah, it's crazy. How can you not like dogs? If you don't like dogs, there's something off.
I'm more of a cat guy myself. I got 2 cats. A dog is a little too much work for me, you know. They're a lot
of work.
But I love dogs, man. Like, you know, put me in a room with a dog, I'll be hanging out with the dog for sure.
100%.
Not to like.
100%. All right, let's get to this card because we could just keep talking whatever. But I do think it's going to be interesting from that standpoint. I will be seeing who the MMA fans are that are going to be up at 3 a.m. So there probably won't be that many, though. I'll just throw that out there. I doubt there's going to be a ton.
I think we have the best Discord in the biz. I think we have like the best subscribers, MMA in the biz. So I actually think we'll have a pretty active chat going. I'm pretty optimistic, actually.
I like it. All right. I'll go with you because I do think we have the best Discord around. And Andy says, my dog likes the shows. LOL. I love that. Perfect. My dog likes the show. Look, Reggie's coming in right now. He wants to talk on the mic. He's not going to talk on the mic because he's well trained, but he wants to talk on the mic. So, or at least get in the shot real quick.
The cats are sleeping
currently. They'll start crawling up on Dan at some point during the show. Do they ever crawl up on you, Dan? Do they ever like?
Yeah. One of them will crawl up on me. I have one. My older cat. He's 15. He's never been a lap cat. He doesn't like being picked up really. But the other one, he's like 2, and he'll just crawl all over you. They like to jump up on the desk at like the worst possible time, so they might make an appearance. They have before.
All right, well, let's see. Maybe they'll make an appearance. I don't know if I've seen them before, so I feel like they haven't made one yet, but they might maybe during this show. But let's get to the fights here. Starting off this fight card with some, I would say, pretty easy names. We got Mahashante versus Nicholas Mota here. Mota 7,500 on DraftKings. Mahashante 8,700 on DraftKings here, Dan. And just starting out with this fight, I think it's a really good fight. I feel like we've had a few of these in a row, like first fights of the card where I've like been really into them. I forget the women's fight. I think it was 2 weeks ago where I was like, I love this fight. And I forget the chick's name, but that was one fight. I think this is another fight where from a DFS perspective, I think this fight plays out on the feet. I think one of these guys is going to the I think we get a hospital shot right here. I think someone's going out. And, Mahashante's, he's skilled. He's got definite, like, danger on the feet. But Mota's hands are super heavy. I always like Mota as a dog, too. I feel like he always comes in as a dog. In all of his fights, Dan, even when he loses fights, he always has like that moment where he hits whoever he's fighting and they're like, oh shit. Like that's even the Torres fight. Like he hit Torres and Torres was like, oh fuck. Like I got to get inside this dude. And like, cause this dude hits hard and he ended up losing that fight obviously, but then he comes in against Timmy Nolan. I think he was like one of the biggest dogs on the card and absolutely cold clocked Nolan. And I wouldn't be shocked if that doesn't happen here. Now, I think if it goes to the cards, I think that's advantage Mahashante. I think he would win a decision. And he is somewhat durable. Even though like he's been, finished too, but like I still see him as somewhat durable. But Mota's power to me, I think is the factor. And I don't think this fight sees the cards. So I'm going to lean Mota here. I'm going to lean Mota for my pick as a dog pick. I like some dogs on this card. Mota is one of them. And I think this fight ends inside the distance. So I think this fight ends via KO. So I don't know what that number is. I'm going to look it up right now while you talk about this fight.
Yeah, I don't know if a fight specifically via KO, but to finish it's minus 250. So this is definitely one
minus
of the
-185.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely one of the better one of the better fights to target, I think. And, you know, like we talk about all the time, first fight of the night usually depresses ownership because people just, you know, they want to feel like they're live deeper into the card. Maybe that matters less because people might not be planning on staying up to view regardless.
I think so.
But yeah, I mean, you know, there's two guys with lots of power in their hands, and both have pretty poor durability. So I think, you know, you're going to see somebody go to the hospital. I think Mota is going to be the one going to the hospital. I took Basharat inside the distance. The line's been moving heavily towards him. You know, I just think he's better. He's more skilled striker. Mota, I just like don't rate at all. I know he like took out Tom Nolan as a pretty heavy underdog last time, and Basharat ended up going to a split last time out against Gabriel Benitez. I definitely favor Basharat in here, but having said that, I'm not going to be going like too extreme one way or the other. You know, you've got Basharat at 31%, you've got Mota at 22%. I'm happy to come in probably maybe a little higher on Mota. I've done a couple runs. Just going with my like base kind of like projections and settings, I'm actually like fading Mota pretty hard. I'm going to manually bump him just because, you know, neither of these guys really looks to grapple or wrestle offensively. So it's going to be pure striking. You know, both of these guys are pretty kill or be killed, not great defensively, poor durability, like we already said. So, you know, there's a lot of variance in striking exchanges. So someone's going to hit the canvas, probably in the early rounds. Yeah, whoever wins this fight, great shout out to Optimal. I'll be probably a little heavier than, you know, projected ownership on Mota, probably around the field on Basharat because he's already like projected to be about 30% owned. Yeah, great fight to target.
Yeah, I agree with you. Great fight to target. We're on opposite sides of the pick, but we both agree that I think it's a really good fight for DFS. And I wouldn't be shocked too if like in your runs you ended up starting to get a little more of Mota just because of some of the dogs like on this card, and like you might want to get over on some other, you know, top tier guys. So as we start running through the card, but it is a good fight to just get over on in general, especially if you're MMEing in DFS. All right, next fight on the card. Let's go Quang Lee, 8K for Quang Lee. And we got Zhao Long, 8,200 for Long on DraftKings. This is another fight that I think is a pretty good. We got a few of these fights early that I think could be good for DFS scoring. First, I'll start with Long. Like Long's last fight against, I think it was Choy Ho or Chung Ho Lee. It was a barn burner. Like it literally started off extremely fast and it like stayed that way the whole time. I thought he was going to melt under the pressure of Holy, and he did not at all. Like that was a super close, I think, split decision. And it could have easily went Long's way. It did not, but he's a good fighter. He's skilled. He's got some wrestling and grappling, which I think is his advantage in this fight. The dude is tough. He's shown that he can go that pace and keep that pace. And last time we saw Quang Lee, it was on short notice against Chris Gutierrez, which is a pretty big step up for someone first fight in the UFC and on short notice. So I don't really ding him for that, but he just had a really hard time getting on the inside of Gutierrez. And you noticed at certain points he went to grapple because he really wasn't having success striking. He was really striking at air because Gutierrez kicks it just was killing him pretty much. In his movement, he really struggled with. He was trying to go for those overhands and they weren't landing. They were landing in, air literally. So I think he'll have a little better time striking, but I think he's going to lose in the grappling and wrestling exchanges to Long. And I just think Long ends up winning in that scenario. So I do think this fight goes to decision because I think both guys are pretty tough. And I could see it being a little closer, but I think the upside for DFS is Long because if there's not a finish, I want the guy who's going to show me more upside in the wrestling and grappling. So I'm going to lean Long here. I think this could end up being like a split decision too. That wouldn't shock me because of the way these guys fight. But yeah, Dan, where you see this fight going?
Yeah, it should be competitive. I agree with most everything you said. I also favor Long. I have Long by decision. He's just more active of the two, especially in the striking. But he also, he mixes in takedowns pretty regularly. Quang Lee actually, like in his debut against Gutierrez, he actually took a round off of him. He took him down. He controlled him for most of the round. So, that's pretty impressive. Like that's a pretty big step up in competition. Most of these guys, most of these guys and girls, like the Asian fighters on this card, and it's like very heavy with Asian fighters. Obviously, we were in Macau. The running theme with all of them is, very low level resumes, super low level of competition, which makes it, it makes it a little more difficult to evaluate. So, but going off what we've seen, Long is definitely the more active of the two. Quang, his nickname is Bang. So we got Quang Bang Lee. He's got a little bit of power in his hands. So, he could lay Long out, but like you said, they both are pretty tough. Long has been hurt and knocked out before, so you can't completely rule that out. I just definitely favor Long's activity. He is going to be the one like pushing the pace. He's going to be the one throwing volume. He's going to be probably the one looking to grapple and wrestle offensively. So I'm lower on this fight overall because I do think it goes to decision, but in this mid price, like 8,200, flat 8K for Quang Lee. These fights, they have a tendency of making their way into the optimal. So I like targeting Long. I'm less enthused about Quang Lee, but this card, it would probably, be beneficial to sort of lean a little bit more into the unknown because we have like so little information on these guys. Like even the guys and girls that we have a little more tape on, their competition is just so low level that it's like truly hard to evaluate. But also when you've got two sort of like low level fighters squaring off, like crazy shit happens. So, I'm not going to completely fade it, but you've got Long projecting for nearly 30%. You've got Quang Lee projecting for nearly 20%. I think I'm going to be fairly comfortable coming in under on both of those.
Yeah, I get that. But the price tags are definitely interesting for DFS just at those 82 8K. And we were talking about this before the show, but like a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about, guys and girls on this card, a lot of them like were in very close decision type fights recently, a lot of split decisions. You're going to hear that a lot with a lot of these fighters where like it could have easily went the other way with a lot of these guys, on this card. So like Dan's saying, like these are very close in competition type fighters. And, we're going to get some really close, maybe bad decisions on this card, Dan. We could definitely see a few bad decisions, but that's the way it goes when you leave it to the judges.
They bring the regular judges with them, right? Like it's not going to be local judges. So bad judging is definitely on the table.
Bad judging, no matter what judges we have, I swear to God, they're just bad either way. So it doesn't really matter in the end. But I'm sure you're going to see a little lean to the hometown, obviously when it's one versus the other, but we'll see on this card here. Let's move to the next fight. We got Lanier Kavanov, 9,400 for Kavanov versus Jose Ochoa, 6,800 for Ochoa. Dan, I'm going to throw this one to you first here. Who do you like in this spot? We saw Kavanov in the Dana White Contender Series last, and he had one of the better knockouts we'll ever see in the Dana White Contender Series. Just absolutely cold clocked. I think it was a left like check hook or something like that just put dude out immediately. But what do you see here with this spot?
Yeah, Kavanagh, I believe he was the first fight on this season of Contender Series and, started it off with a bang, fucking vicious left hook over Antoine Ho, who also, is also like a legit prospect. Like people really like Antoine Ho. A lot of people picked him to win. So it's not as if, you see a lot of these Contender Series fights where you've got like a heavy favorite just goes in there and steamrolls a guy. That's not what this was. So, that finish on Contender Series, very impressive. He's a kickboxer. He's got a BJJ purple belt, so he can do a little bit of grappling. He mixes in the takedowns. Striking is very slick. Obviously has some pretty great power in his hands, especially down at 125. You know, not necessarily always known as a weight class to have guys with tons of power. He's got legit power for the weight class. Solid cardio. He seems like the real deal. Very exciting prospect. On the other side, you've got Jose Ochoa, who, you know, he's a Peruvian guy. Pretty much all of his experience is like on the lower level kind of Peruvian regional scene. The one thing about these Peruvian guys is they've got cardio for days and they're durable as hell. That's just like the fighting culture that you find in Peru, especially since, you know, on the cardio side, it's up at elevation. So like if you're a fighter in Peru, you know, you've probably got great cardio. You're probably durable. Unfortunately for Ochoa, you know, he's got this killer be killed style, which we love for DFS. Especially we love to target against because he's going to go out there. You know, he's going to try to put like the pace and volume on him, but he sort of like lacks that one shot power. So he's going to go try and put it on Kavanov. And I think Kavanov is going to find his chin sooner rather than later and dust him pretty quickly. I mean, there is a lot of risk there, though, because like I said, you know, these Peruvian guys, they generally are very durable. We saw it last week with, I'm blanking on it now. I picked him. Yontop.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yontop, I picked him.
I mean, it was a good call from the standpoint you didn't like the other guy, right?
Right. I mean, you know, Rufy, he didn't look bad. He did like beat the absolute shit out of him. But, you know, Yontop.
He slowed down towards the end. He was beating the shit out of him for sure.
It was much more competitive than the line entailed. So, you know, when you're looking for kind of value, you know, Rufy did not look like a minus 900 in that fight. Maybe like a minus 500, you know. But, you know, Yontop hung in there. You know, the shot that he took, you know, that hook where Rufy was kind of like fading away, I think that probably drops like,
dude, the no look one. You're talking about the no look one, right? Where his like head turned the other way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
dude, that was
probably 95% of the roster. You know, so credit to Yontop for the chin.
I mean, he was a lot heavier, so that probably helped a little bit, but
yeah. Yeah, I don't think this goes too well for Ochoa. I think Kavanov probably finds an early finish. But, you know, there's definitely risk there because I think Ochoa probably does have some durability. And at 9,400, you're going to need, and, you know, this top end has a lot of really good finishing options. So you're going to need an early finish. I'm not positive he necessarily gets it. So, yeah, it's risky, but I'll still be targeting him pretty heavily. I did an initial run just with my numbers. I'm getting to like, you know, Kavanaugh's projecting to be around 20% owned. I was getting around like mid-30s on him. So I'm not going to push it. I'll probably just be happy to get to him where I can afford him, you know. But, yeah, there's a pretty large disparity in talent, resume, skill, all that. So Kavanagh's the pick inside the distance. It's just, does he finish the fight quickly enough? Does he get the knockdowns he needs? Does he finish the fight at all? Because, you know, maybe this Ochoa guy can take a beating. That might be one of his best qualities, unfortunately for him.
I think the one thing we're kind of looking past is like, yeah, Kavanagh looks really good. He had the big KO and stuff like that. But, I mean, he still went to decision with, like, other fights. It's not like he's won every fight by KO, and he's only had 7 fights. Like, he looks really good. The fights that we've seen, the few fights we've seen, he looks really good. But I honestly think Ochoa looks pretty good, too. Now, Ochoa likes to use his kicks. You're going to see he kind of does a lot of, like, jumping kicks. He'll switch kicks, the knees and stuff like that. He's a little wild in that sense, but I think it's because he doesn't really mind getting caught and maybe taken down because he's pretty good, like getting back to his feet from what I've seen. And he's got like some decent grappling. He does. I think he trains with Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira was in his corner for the last fight that I watched, and he had an anaconda choke that was pretty sick. Put the dude out standing, put the dude out. And, you know, Charles Oliveira was in his corner going nuts. So it's, you know, that's pretty good that he's, you know, got guys like that in his corner. And,
yeah, I definitely don't mind. I don't mind targeting him because, again, we're at, you know, we're at flyweight. Fights at flyweight are usually
There's
pretty
not many
competitive.
6K fighters either on this card, just in general. I was just looking at it. So it's him. Fernandez is 6,600. Are they the only two? No. Yeah, they're the only two. So like, I think I would prefer him over Fernandez. Like if you made me pick a 6K fighter, I think I'd prefer him. And I think he might be tough enough where maybe as long as he can try and stay, I think he's got to stay at kicking range. I think he's got to either be completely in or completely out. You don't want to get into like tight quarters and try and like throw with someone like Kavanov. I think we learned that pretty quickly, that if they get in that like tight, dirty boxing range or anything like that, that's Kavanov. He'll probably win those battles. But if he can just stay at kicking range and then get in there and try and mix in a little bit of, grappling, I think he could, maybe he doesn't win, but I think he could show a little better than what this line entails. So, I do think Kavanov wins. I'm not as confident in a finish in this fight, though. I think it's a decision fight either way. Now, Kavanov just might look really good in the decision fight. That's very much possible, but
without a finish, it's gonna be hard for him to be optimal without a finish. His inside the distance number is great.
It's great.
Plus 130. Like I just as a matter of process, I'm gonna be targeting that. Obviously, like I said, 35 over 22. And like Lemons points out here, buddy, that Romero kid looked phenomenal. Yeah, I think that was at 125. That was either at 125 or 135. And Onama was a huge favorite. Nobody gave Romero. I mean, me too. I said, this dude is getting absolutely steamrolled, and he made us look stupid.
He did not get steamrolled. Now Onama obviously ended up winning the fight, but I think Onama was even shocked how good the kid was, and how he just came forward and just said, "I don't give a fuck. Like I'm gonna make this a fight." And
sometimes I wonder how much of that is like, I don't know how in tune. Obviously, it probably varies from fighter to fighter, but like how in tune are you that like you are a massive betting favorite?
I think they all know.
You take your opponent a little lightly, then they, it's like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. It's like you get punched in the face and you're like, oh fuck, I thought I was just gonna like get this guy out of here. Now I actually have to like kind of fight him.
Yeah, that's just my take. I think they all know. I think they all see it. It's all over social media. They're on social media. They got, they're training with all these guys. You don't think that's in the gym, like the week of the fight and stuff, or the week before the fight, like, oh, you're a big favorite or you're a big dog. Like no one's giving you a chance. I think a lot, especially the dogs. I think the big dogs know it for sure. Cause you don't think those coaches are like, dude, no one's literally giving you a chance. You are a, this guy's a minus 1,000 favorite against you. So go out there and show them they're wrong. So I think they know. Yeah. All right. Sounds like a fight that you're going to be heavier on in general. I might be lower on just the top tier guy just to be a little different, but good fight. Let's go to the next fight here. We got Carlos Hernandez versus Demerol. That's the first name on the card. How bad was that, Dan?
That was actually pretty good. I think it's Tumen Demerol.
That definitely sounds better. Tumen Demerol.
You want to give the first name a shot?
Yeah. No, I definitely do. What is it, like neon? Like I don't even know. How do you start that?
Niamjargal Tumen Demerol.
This is unfair. This isn't even like that's not even like I'll mess up names that aren't even close to that name. So that's crazy. I'm not getting that name. Well, I need like a nickname. Give me the nickname, Dan.
What's the nickname?
Art of the Knockout. Is that his nickname? Really?
That's a pretty good nickname, right?
Yeah. Is that his nickname?
Knockout.
Oh yeah.
He's got 2 knockout wins. Knockout wins out of honestly, 8 wins.
That doesn't shock me when I watch him because I'll just start this fight off. Like, I think he's pretty good. What I've watched of him, I think he's good, but I can kind of see why, some fights he'll catch people and some fights he won't, because he's a little wild for me. Like he's kind of just got a style that I think like some fights he's going to look amazing and catch people and look, that's why he's got that nickname and everything like that. And then some fights, if you can pass that like round and a half with him, where you're like, you kind of get out of danger, and that's when he starts to slow down. And guys like Carlos Hernandez, who has some fights in the UFC, even though he hasn't looked great, especially against like the top tier guys, he's at least fought some pretty good fighters in the UFC to date. I could see him starting to win the later rounds and stuff like that and win like a close decision that way. But I think Art of the Knockout over here, I think he's pretty good, and I think he might win this fight here against Carl. I think he's the more dangerous guy. Mm-hmm. I think Hernandez could win like a late, maybe he could get like a late finish or a decision. But I think if that happens, it's more like because this dude's slowing down. And but I kind of like him here. I like his grappling. It felt like he kept going for like these submissions. Like when you were just like in grappling exchanges, he would just find different submissions. So he's got decent grappling. His takedowns are okay. One thing I didn't like about him just in general was I noticed in some fights he would be winning striking exchanges and then just randomly just going for takedowns and selling out for takedowns. And I'm like, why? This dude's bleeding. Like this dude has blood all over his eye. You've won like the last 4 exchanges striking, and then you're just like totally selling out for I get like, changing the pace, when they're not like, when they don't think you're going to. I totally get that. But like, just like on your knees, grabbing the ankles, like selling out for the takedowns. I don't understand that stuff. So, that's the stuff that I get worried about with these kind of younger, raw type fighters in general. But I do think he's the side I'm going to take here. I'm going to lean with the dog here a little bit. What's the line at right now, Dan, in this fight?
Let's see. We got Tumen Demerol plus 142 and Hernandez minus 165.
Okay, so the line's closing in because I think Hernandez was a bigger favorite, right?
Hernandez was a bigger favorite before weigh-ins. Hernandez was minus 185 before weigh-ins, so the line has moved towards Tumen Demerol. I picked Hernandez just because I think technically, like especially on the feet, he's just like much more. He's much better technically. He's more processed.
He's a better boxer. He's a better boxer.
Boxing is very solid. Where he does struggle is in the wrestling. His takedown defense is pretty poor. He's got good getup. He's got solid submission defense. I think he lasted pretty long against Tyra. Didn't get subbed immediately.
Second round.
They've been matching him up really tough, man. Like Daniel Barres, Altamirano, Alan Nascimento, Dennis Bondar. One of these is not like the other. Tatsura Taira, Ray Tsuruya. They've been matching him up really tough. And, he's come not lately, but he has come through as like a bigger underdog at times. Now he's the favorite. DFS wise, I definitely like the Tumen Demerol side much better, just because he is wild. Like he's another one of these guys who's like not the most highly skilled, pretty bad resume, but he's extremely aggressive and has that like killer be kill mentality. He's going to come at you. He's going to try to take your head off. He's going to be attempting multiple takedowns. He's going to be trying to submit you once he gets you to the ground. So, we love to target that, but I think ultimately he's going to find himself in a bad spot. He's going to tire out. And, as the fight goes on, Hernandez is going to sort of like take over. He might even find a finish just because Tumen Demerol is so wild. He just kind of sort of like overextends himself and puts him in bad spots. And I think Hernandez, while like his grappling definitely isn't his strongest quality, I think he's capable. And I think, he might even be able to find a late submission. Whether that scores well enough at 8,600, probably not. Like when it comes to DFS, I think the side is definitely Tumen Demerol. They're both projecting to be about 20% owned. Just running my stuff like raw projection, I've got nearly 40% Tumen Demerol. I'm going to be getting to him quite a bit just for his finishing upside, just because he fights like an insane person.
Yeah, which is a good point by you that it makes Carlos Hernandez probably a little bit of a better DFS play than what he would normally be on another site, just because of the style he's going to, be going up against. It's going to create just action more or less. And that can result in finishes on either side. And we haven't really seen much from that standpoint with Carlos Hernandez for the most part.
He should have gotten a finish against Bondar.
Yes,
remember
but
he slammed Bondar. They said it was a clash of heads. It really wasn't, because Bondar's head hit the canvas and knocked him out before they even kind of like clashed heads. That was terrible, honestly, that they took that away from him.
But your point of look at who they've matched him up against. They have not been kind to him with the matchup process here. So this is definitely at least a better spot here for him. But I kind of like Carlos Hernandez more as like a dog, not like a decent favorite, for Carlos Hernandez at least. So we're both seems like, well, we're on opposite sides, but we both think Tumen Demerol is the better DFS play for sure.
100%. So especially I was expecting him to be and my ownership projections aren't quite done yet. I'm gonna kind of finish everything up once we get off the show. I'll have it posted to the site, but I was expecting Tumen Demerol to be pushing like mid-30s, but if he's going to be at 20%, then I'm super happy to get over on that.
Same. Yeah, Friday show. We got 3 a.m. lock here, Helms. We got 3 a.m. lock. So we got it. We had to do the Friday show because we weren't doing a midnight show. I know that. So we had to make sure we got the noon Eastern. I got 2 more shows after this, so we had to get them in here before we got the NFL show at 3, and then we got the hoop show at 6. So full day of sports action here, but definitely love it. And let's go to the next fight here. We've got Fang Shao Kahn, 9,200 for Shao Kahn against Shi Ming, 7K for Shi Ming. This is going to be one of those matchups, Dan, where you see, I think, the big, height and reach advantage play out big time for Shao Kahn. She's taller. She's always very skinny. She's skinny, but tall and long, and she's going to use that reach. And Shi Ming is almost always the shorter fighter in most of her fights, but she's like very short. I think she's like 5'1", 5'2".
Yes. Tiny.
And I just think she's going to, I think this fight is as simple as, I think she's just going to struggle to get inside to either try and, take her down or to get some volume off with the striking. And I think Shao Kahn's just going to kind of, counter strike her pretty much to depth and like just forward pressure, counter strike and just, kind of piece her up that way. Maybe Ming tries to take her down if she can get inside, but that's if she can even get into that scenario. Once she gets there, though, she is kind of strong, not a terrible grappler, right? Because she's little, she's compact. But I think this is just a tough draw for someone like her. Even though I think she might have she's pretty fast. Like she is pretty fast, but I think she's going to get countered to death here. What do you think?
Yeah. Sometimes these are simple. And to me, this really just comes down to Shi Ming does not have the size and physicality to really compete with Fang. Fang is, like you said, big size and reach advantage, physicality advantage. She's definitely got better activity and volume. She's got solid volume, solid power. She mixes her strikes and targets well. She's got a BJJ brown belt, I believe. She mixes in takedowns, not super consistently, but I can definitely see that as a path for her in this fight. I would like to see a little bit more activity when she gets in top. She doesn't really show that much urgency to find a finish, but I think if this plays out mostly on the feet, which I think it does, then she's got Shi Ming all day. Like you said, Shi Ming is going to have to try to get inside, and Fang, from what I've seen, manages range really well. So, I think this goes to decision. So it's going to be tough to pay up to 9,200 for Fang, but you know, I could also see a world where she just kind of like where she gets her down on the ground and just sort of like grounds and pounds her and finishes her. And you know, I've got Fang projected at 17% ownership right now. That feels really high to me, especially since like this upper range is like pretty strong and has some fighters with much better finishing odds. I could see Fang coming in between like 10 and 15%. So, you know, I don't mind getting to around the field on that. Maybe I'll get to her at around like 20% just because, you know, it's less about her, more about her opponent and how undersized she is. I think she could just like really beat her up here. I think we could see a finish, even though it's not the most likely thing. So I like Fang as a contrarian piece where you're needing to kind of like save a little bit of ownership because we've got some options in the top tier here that you're going to want to get to who are going to be highly owned. And yeah, that's basically it, man. Like I said, like sometimes these things are simple and you just want to back the fighter who is, you know, bigger and more physical.
Yep, that's kind of how I see it. I mean, I don't think it's a great DFS play, but like you said, it's one of those plays like if you want to go to Fang and you know, just for like maybe your lineup's pretty chalky and you just need like one fighter that you think is going to be a little lower owned, you know, take a shot on her in the 9K, hope she gets a finish. I don't think she's one of like the best 9Ks though. And you look at the 9K range and it's like you talked about Kavanov. You got Mingyang, you got Peter Yan, you got Kong, who I think is going to be pretty popular, or I would assume is going to be somewhat popular. So there's just it's kind of loaded range here, and you know she's going to end up falling down there. So if you want a lower owned target, could be her. But I agree with you, kind of a simple breakdown here. So let's go to the next fight here. We got Kiri Sejudo, minus 118 favorite over on DraftKings. And what is he? 7,800 under. So this line's flipped, right, Dan? This line's flipped.
Yeah, so there's now the value side.
Yeah, against Dong Hong Choy here, minus 102 for Choy and 8,400 on DraftKings. And honestly, when I broke down these two fighters, I was like, oh wow, like just before I even looked at like the line, I was like, oh wow, like Cejudo must be the favorite. I think he's got Choy. Like I think he's got Choy in a lot of the spots. Now the one thing I think Choy might have him in is Cejudo has a susceptibility to get taken down. He can be taken down. Now he is like a little longer. You got to be careful with him, but he can get taken down if you do have good cardio, which I don't think Choi's is terrible, right? I think he's got decent cardio. And you do have volume with the takedowns. You can, frustrate someone like Cejudo who wants to be at range, right, Dan? And that's where he wins this fight. So I think Choi's going to be trying to close the distance and get him into grappling and wrestling exchanges. And I think Cejudo is going to try and play this out on the feet. And I just feel like Cejudo is probably going to win and have the bigger moments in the striking exchanges. Choy can be hittable, like very hittable. At times his hands are lower than you would like. And against someone like Cejudo, who's going to have the range to snipe you, I think that's very concerning. So I'm on the Cejudo side. I think he wins. I don't know if he gets a finish, but I could see a finish. Choy is tough though. Like he is somewhat tough. So it probably goes to the cards, but I got Cejudo. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I also have Cejudo, but I think DFS wise, I think I prefer Choy just because, like you said, Cejudo, if he's winning, it's going to be like pretty much just like a striking battle at range. And like we talk about all the time, striking doesn't necessarily score that well on DraftKings. DraftKings scoring is really kind of tilted towards grapplers and wrestlers, unless, you're getting a knockout. So I think, like you mentioned earlier, like I think Choy, although he doesn't really wrestle, go for takedowns, all that consistency, I think we could probably see him go for that here because I think in the striking, he's going to have a hard time. Cejudo is definitely going to have, he's got a pretty sizable reach advantage. He's got like a 7-inch reach advantage.
I just noticed it right when Dan said his name, and I was like, yeah, I've been calling him Henry Cejudo the whole time. Not Henry Cejudo. That is not who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, I don't love this fight, mainly just because I think Cejudo wins, but I don't think he scores very well. I know he's going to be the value side, so he probably will be catching more ownership than he deserves for that reason. But there are dogs that we like better. Like we already talked about Tumen Demerol.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think actually the DFS side here is like, if you want to pivot to Choy, he is, 8,400 isn't like the most prohibitively expensive, but he doesn't really have that much volume. He doesn't wrestle consistently. If you're playing Choy, I think it's like mainly just kind of a low-owned pivot, and you're hoping that he busts out the wrestling and is able to kind of like dominate on the mat, which is fully on the table. Like, I can't stress enough that evaluating these guys and girls is like, you can evaluate what you see, but what you see is sort of very limited because, for one thing, for a lot of them, there isn't a whole lot of tape. And for the other, like, the level of competition is so low that it's like, you can see them do a thing in a fight, but just how indicative is that really of kind of like the fighter that they are? So there's a ton of merit.
On top of it too, Dan, in certain fights, they might see openings or advantages that they might not see in other fights. They might see a guy that is susceptible to certain things, so they decide, I'm going to be a wrestler this fight, or a heavy grappling fight. And then, so that's the other thing. When you have limited footage, you're like, okay, so what is this guy actually, right? But I do think you're going to see Choy at some point just decide, I got to get takedowns. Like, I gotta get this fight to the ground. Because I do think he's going to get pieced up a little bit on the feet. I
also think Choy has, he doesn't have like the greatest power, but he has a little bit of power in his hands, and so he can be hurt and dropped. So
yep.
I think there's a lot of sort of hidden upside on Choy, and he's going to go largely ignored by the field because of the line movement, because his metrics are pretty poor basically everywhere.
I could see this fight being a split decision. It's just another fight. I could totally just see the split here. So,
I don't love Cejudo at chalk. 25% isn't necessarily like super high owned, but I think kind of just the way he profiles, probably wins a low scoring decision. If when he wins, I think Choy definitely carries a lot more upside in this matchup. And low ownership.
Ownership and upside. I totally understand it, and the pricing isn't terrible, right? It's not terrible at those price tags, so I like it. Let's move to the next fight. We've got Jalissi versus Sung Young Yu. 8,300 for you, Jalissi 7,900. This one for me was one of those fights that was tough for me to break down, because when I watched you, I was like, okay, this guy, every time he finishes a round, he looks gassed, and then he'll start a round and I'll be like, oh, he doesn't look that tired anymore. Like, what's going on? So he might just like be one of those guys that like looks at a lot of the fight, but when he actually is out there fighting, he doesn't like show it as much in the actual fight. So I was a little confused by that. But he's a guy who is a very good grappler. He can wrestle. His grappling is actually like really, really good. I was pretty impressed by his grappling. A few things where I was just like, oh shit, that was pretty nasty. And he's got some power, even though I wouldn't categorize him as like a great striker. I think he's got some power. And you've got Jalissi on the other side, who has grappling as well. I don't know if he's going to be the better grappler in this matchup, but I do think he's got some good grappling. I don't think he will be the better grappler, though. So I think he's going to try and keep this fight standing, whereas Yu's going to try and get this fight to the ground. And in Yu's last fight, the one thing I'll bring up too, he looked tired after each round, but he shot for 14 takedowns, got 8 of them. Yep. But when you're shooting for constant takedowns, that means you are allowing guys to get back to their feet, whether it be you're not good at control, which I don't know if that's the case. I think it's more he's trying for things and just not getting them. So he's losing positioning, and then they're getting back to their feet. But for DraftKings, That is very good, Dan, because if we get high volume wrestling in a win, whether it's a decision or a finish, I don't think this is a finish fight. I don't think either guy gets finished. I think that this goes to the cards, and I think high volume wrestling is something I'm in for. So I think use the better DFS play. I think both guys are pretty skilled, though. Honestly, I kind of like both guys here. I just think you has the DFS edge with the takedowns that I'm gonna lean into.
Yeah, both of these guys, like you said, primary grapplers. I think this is probably one of the better mid-range fights to target. Ownership is pretty spread out here. You 25%, Jalissi 20%. So not super restrictive there. I agree with you though that I think you is much better grappler. He's a BJJ black belt, good takedowns. He uses takedowns heavily. He's got some pretty solid control. On the other end of it, he's got like good takedown defense. He's got good get up. So, it's like we said, a lot of these fights are probably going to be pretty competitive. You see a lot of these guys go to like split decisions. They're very back and forth. Again, we're like down here at bantamweight. Lower weight classes are usually like pretty competitive fights, regardless of what the line says. I'm on the U side for sure. Like, the funny thing, you mentioned like his cardio and how he looks tired. Like one of the fights where I watched him, he just like would refuse the stool, but would just kind of like sit on the floor, which is just like a really bad visual. But like you said, then he'd come out into the round and he looked fine. So
even the announcers were like, he looks terrible. Like this looks terrible. And then they start the fight and they're like, oh wow, he doesn't look tired anymore. Like he doesn't look that bad. And I'm just sitting there watching and I'm like, yeah, he looks not that bad. Like I get, I mean, like, but again, when you are grappling and wrestling that much, you are going to get tired. Like that is a tiring stretch. Not many people are Marab where they can just like shoot 14 takedowns and be like, I could shoot 20 more. Like I could go 4 more rounds. Like that's not normal. Like people don't do that. That's a lot of volume with the takedown. So just the fact that he doesn't quit, Dan, I think is good enough for me to be like, okay, like I can back this guy. Like he doesn't quit, but I do think both guys are talented. I think Jalissi might have like the speed advantage on the feet. I think that's where I don't know if he has the power advantage, but I think he's got the speed advantage. And I like his combos. I think he has good combinations with his punches. So I think he might have the advantage there, even though I think has that like the actual power advantage just in general. I think he's going to look like a little bit of the stronger fighter when they're out there, but we're both
in the stand-up as well. Yeah. But I think this mostly plays out in the grappling and wrestling realm. I think you definitely has him there and scores really well on DraftKings. So great fight to target.
Yeah, it's definitely a good fight to target. Let's go to the next fight here. We got Mingyang, 9,100 for Mingyang versus Ozzy Diaz, 7,100 for Diaz on DraftKings here. And this is one of those 9K fights, Dan, that I want. I want to get a piece of this fight because I like Mingyang here. I think Mingyang finds a finish. He always I feel like when I watched him fight the last couple fights, like even when they get into a little bit of like a firefight, he does a pretty good job of staying somewhat safe. He'll get tagged a little bit, but like, safer. And he's got some power. Like he's got some power. He does have like the wrestling or grappling if he wants to use it, but I think this is just him all day. I think he's going to run through Diaz, and I think it's a good fight for DFS. From a 9K like fighter perspective, he's one of my favorites on the card. I really like Mingyang a lot just because I see just the way he fights. I think he's going to try and, make this a quick fight. And I think it is a quick fight here. So I'm on Mingyang's side. I like Diaz is gonna slug it out. That's a reason though. I think this fight's good. I think both guys are gonna slug it out, and I think Mingyang is just gonna be able to stay a little safer in those exchanges and win those. And even if he gets hurt, Dan, I think he can fall back on some like of the wrestling and grappling if he needed to. So I'm on the Mingyang side. What about you?
I'm also on the Mingyang side. He is going to be one of my highest owned, but I'm not discounting Diaz at all. I think Diaz is actually probably Let me just look at this range real quick. I think Diaz is probably one of the best outside of the main event. He's probably the best, like low 7K, 6K options. I mean, you got Ozdemir too, who I really like, but
I was going to say that's my favorite, but yeah, go for it.
The thing is I think both of these guys, like, you know, there isn't going to be any wrestling and grappling here. These guys are just going to kind of like stand and bang. Diaz has pretty low volume. He's usually pretty content to, you know, manage range, be patient, but he's got solid power, solid quickness. And, you know, Mingyang, like we've seen him hurt and knocked out before. So I think both of these guys are live for a knockout. I think this line is somewhat wide. I'm going to be targeting both sides of this fight pretty heavily because I think like our boy in the chat mentioned, like Diaz is certainly live. He's got a good team around him. You know, he's got some decent wins in LFA. And my biggest concern with Mingyang is he's never won a fight that's made it out of the first round. Any fight that makes it out of the first round, he's lost. So I've got major cardio concerns for him. I think Diaz probably fights a little, like he's lower volume, but you know, he's a little more patient, a little more calculated. So I think once we get to like the second or third round, if you can get plus money on Ozzy Diaz, if you're awake, I think that's probably a pretty good bet. But yeah, I like both sides here for DFS. Mingyang will be one of my highest owned. Diaz probably one of my higher owned, if not the highest owned in that like lower 6K range.
All right. I like it. Good fight. Very good fight to target. Let's go to the next fight here. Carlos Olberg, 8,900 on DraftKings versus Volkan Ozdemir, 7,300 for Ozdemir. Here, this fight, Ozdemir is a plus 200 dog on DK Sportsbook right now. Carlos Olberg sitting a minus 245. Favorite here, Dan. I'm going to throw it right back to you with this fight here. Do you see the Olberg win train just continue?
Yeah, I think I do. You know, Ozdemir has had a couple good wins recently, but, you know, look at who they're over. Last time out, he dusted Johnny Walker, which, you know, Johnny Walker is very much trending downward. He gets the rear naked choke over Bogdan Guskov, who, you know, exciting prospect. A lot of power in his hands, but still very green. Before that, you know, he gets handled by Nikita Krylov. He goes to decision against Paul Craig. You know, Ozdemir, very experienced, highly skilled, obviously has a ton of power in his hands. There's a reason he's like kind of the premier sort of gatekeeper up at 205, you know? So I think Olberg will pass the test, but it's still, you know, it's still a pretty big step up for Olberg. Last time we saw Olberg, he hilariously knocked out Alonso Menafield in like 15 seconds because Menafield just fucking kind of ran face first into a knockout there. But you know, you look at the other people that he's beat. You know, you've got Dawoon Jung, Ihor Potieria, Nikolai Neger. I didn't think this is where I was gonna have trouble with the names. Negumereanu, you know, just like not very good competition. This is going to be a massive step up for him. And like Olberg wants to sort of keep it at range. He wants to, you know, just kickbox you. Ozdemir isn't going to let him just stand at range. Ozdemir is going to come forward. He's going to be throwing bombs. He's going to be trying to knock him out. I don't think we see like any grappling or wrestling in this. I think this is going to be a straight kickboxing match, but I think if we do see any grappling or wrestling, that might be advantage Olberg. So that's like another reason why I like him. You know, we saw him, what was it? Yeah, like he gets the RNC against Dawoon Jung 2 fights ago. So that's definitely a part of his game that is developing, even though we know him mainly as a striker. I do have some cardio concerns for Olberg too. Like we haven't really seen Olberg face too much adversity or show the ability to push through it. So, you know, Ozdemir is going to be a pretty steep test for him, I think. So I like both sides of this fight. This is one of the better inside the distance fights, but you know, the field is going to be very heavy on Olberg for good reason. And I think Ozdemir probably goes a bit overlooked, but he's going to carry like pretty great leverage over Olberg. I haven't projected for like 20% ownership. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ozdemir come in under that. So I think this is a great fight to target both sides. There's obviously bust risk here, though, because of the lack of grappling or wrestling. You know, a later round finish for Olberg probably doesn't score very well. Decision probably doesn't score very well. But I'm still going to be targeting it pretty heavily on both sides.
Yeah, so this is kind of where I'm going with this fight. And I do think Ozdemir can win this fight. And my one question, like, what happens to Olberg when Ozdemir just doesn't go out early? Because Ozdemir's tough. Like, and again, he's been in the, you brought up who he's fought, but like, he's been in the cage with a bunch of very good fighters, you know, level of competition. Like, he's clearly been in the cage, and he's a tough dude to finish. Like, I know Yuri did it, obviously, but like, in general, he's just a tough dude to just completely put out. And that kind of shows in even his losses outside of like, you know, one or two. Like, he's just a tough guy to completely put out there. And what happens when he walks through a few of Olberg's shots? If he does, and he just keeps moving forward, does that frustrate someone like Carlos Olberg, who a lot of his fights are finishing early? Yeah, I know he got the late sub, but like most of his fights are finishing early. And I don't think he's fought anyone as dangerous as Volkan Ozdemir, for Definitely sure. Not. So what happens in that scenario? And I think that's the scenario where I'm like, I could see Ozdemir kind of drowning him a little bit later in the rounds if this goes past that first round, gets to that second round, and he's still moving forward. And like you said, he's going to bring the fight to him. He's not going to just let him stand at range and just, you know, kick and punch him to death. Obviously, he's going to make this a fight. So
we're going to learn a lot
here. Yeah,
we're going to learn a lot about Olberg here.
I'll take the plus 200 dog money here. I'll take my shot at plus 200. And I think he's a good DFS play because he does have finishing upside. And we've seen it, like when he wins, you know, he can put up a pretty good score. And even in a decision, if he somehow won a decision, I don't think you're like pissed because he's 7,300. So, you know, in that scenario, a decision win either way is going to hurt more the Carlos Olberg side, no matter what, as opposed to the Volkan side. So I guess this is me saying I'm a little lower on Olberg. I'm lowest on Olberg from a DFS perspective, and I'm going to be betting Volkan, and I'll probably play some Volkan in DFS as well, just because I think he's live, especially if this goes past the first round and Olberg maybe gets a little frustrated that he hasn't like put this guy out. So that's my take here. Me and Dan on opposite sides. Per usual, we try and keep that trend going on this show here. Next fight on the card, we got Wang here. Wang sitting a minus 950 favorite over on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think that's the biggest dog on the card versus Gabriel Fernandez, plus 625 dog on this card here. Wang, we saw her out last time. She's got crazy power, kickboxer. You know, she wants the fight to stay on the feet. And Fernandez, you know, she's not, even though she has a couple takedowns like last fight, she's not a wrestler. That's not her game. And I think it's just a good matchup for Wang to kind of, you know, do what she wants and find a finish here. So I'm on the Wang side. I think she gets it done. I think it's kind of like, okay, we got this prospect. We think she's pretty good, Dan. Let's give her another test against someone who's fought some decent competition, but let's give her someone who also wants to fight her fight and not someone who wants to, you know, wrestle her to death and see if she's got the real wrestling, you know, takedown defense to stop that. So I think it was good matchmaking by the UFC for her. I think it's second fight in the UFC.
Yeah.
And I'm on the Wang side here. I think she's a good DFS play. I think she could find a finish. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, so I mean, like we talked about it last week with kind of with Weidman and Anders, which didn't end up happening. But you know, I don't necessarily believe in like home cooking when it comes to judging, but when it comes to matchmaking, like we certainly do believe in that. And that's kind of exactly what this is. You know, Wang Kong, Chinese, we're in China. She is like a pretty hot prospect that they are definitely obviously looking to build up. You know, kind of like opposite of Carlos Hernandez, where they seem to not super like this guy. And they keep matching him up super tough. Yeah, that's not happening with Wang Kong. They're definitely giving her very winnable fights that she can win in, you know, exciting kind of dominant fashion. You're definitely going to hear multiple times on the broadcast that she, you know, won a kickboxing match against Valentina Shevchenko. Like they're trying to build
at least like 3 different times, right, Dan?
Yeah, 3 different times, like during the first half of the walkout minimum. Like it's going to be constant. You know, striking is obviously her strength. She's got great volume. She's got, you know, she's got solid power. It's not exactly like one punch knockout power, but it's like she's powerful and aggressive enough where she will get to you eventually, just, you know, through attrition of just like beating on you over the course of time. And that's kind of where I have concerns. She's 9,600. I'm not sure she necessarily just like weighs like hospital 130s Fernandez right out the gate. So, you know, she's probably going to have a little bit of trouble making value unless she can do that. On the other side, you know, Fernandez's defensive wrestling is really poor. And even though that's not necessarily like a main part of Wang Kong's game, she is definitely working on it. You know, I mean, she's obviously like a prospect that they're looking to build up. They're looking to.
That's not going to play anything in this fight, I don't think.
You don't think that's
wrestling?
I think she could definitely like take her down and wail.
Look at who she's fought though, too, Dan. When you're looking at the numbers and stuff, like that's some pretty tough stuff right there. When we just look at her wrestling, like she's not fighting anyone like that.
You mean looking at who? Like at Gabby
Fernandez competition, who she's fought when you're looking at her like defensive wrestling and stuff. I'm not saying it's great, but I'm just saying like look at who she's fought. You know,
it's true. Yeah, I mean like Jazz, Teresa Bleda, like not the easy. You know, those are like wrestling heavy, but
yeah.
Like I said, like Wang Kong, she is a work in progress. So, you know, with like these prospects who are a constant work in progress, you expect to see improvements every time they step in the cage. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you get a couple takedowns. Maybe she gets, and I think if she gets her down on the ground, you know, she's going to ground and pound finish her.
Yeah.
But, you know, without a finish, she's like dust for the optimal.
What's funny is like, I think Gabriela Fernandez is like actually a decent fighter who's had really bad. She's another one. I think she's gotten really bad matchmaking. Like they just said, like, screw you. We're putting you up. This is your weak link. Well, here you go. We're going to test it. So they give her like 2 right off the bat. And then they're like, oh shit. So then they give her one where it's like, okay, they gave her one and she won. And now it's like, we're going to feed you back to the dogs, but we'll give you someone who's not, you know, a wrestler, you know what I mean? But someone who's very dangerous and stuff. And so I think she's gotten a tough draw, honestly, with her matchmaking.
Yeah. I mean, in the striking, Fernandez, you know, she could be competitive. She has lower volume, but she does have like some power in her hands. So, you know, maybe, you know, obviously puncher's chance, anything can happen in a cage fight. She's just so hittable, man. Her striking defense is not good. Like, you talk about the matchmaking. She's gotten matched up with like primary wrestlers, and she's still absorbing like 5.5 significant strikes per minute. That's really bad. Her striking differential is pretty terrible. So, you know, Kong, I mean, my projections are absolutely jamming her. I'm probably gonna pull back on that a little bit. I try not to like mess with the numbers too much, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just like really uncomfortable.
Kind of makes sense.
Uncomfortable with Wang Kong at 9,600 just because she seems very dependent on the quick win bonus here to make the optimal, and I just don't know if that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like I feel like that's the same thing with Kavanov in a way. I think these guys kind of need a quicker win, but you know, they got the upside for it.
You know, she's got a pretty good inside the distance number. She's got a decent round 1 number, you know. and she's going to be much lower owned than like Mingyang. She's going to be lower than Olberg. Obviously,
She's got to be lower than. Is she lower than Kavanov? She's got to be, right?
You know, Kavanagh is actually slightly lower than her. Interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I think it's, you know, we talked about like Ochoa, probably pretty durable. So, you know, these two top end options in Kong and Kavanagh, you need the early finish, but it's kind of it's extremely sketchy if they don't get it. And I'm not supremely confident in either of them just like dusting their opposition right off the rip.
I agree with you. Let's go to the next fight here. We got Canan, 7,700 for Canan versus Muslim Silikov, 8,500 for Silikov here. Both two kind of lower volume type guys. Silikov obviously has like the kicking. Canan's more like that, like one punch, you know, power type guy. But for the most part, Dan, I mean, you're looking at guys who, you know, decision or KO pretty much. And I think this is a decision fight, to be honest with you. I think it's just who has the bigger moments. I'm sure you're going to bring up Salikov's age in a second here. So I'll give you the floor in a sec, but I'm going to take the shot with the dog here just because I view these guys like pretty close. And I think Canan is just the kind of the right side here, and I'm getting plus 155-ish on him. So I'm going to take my shot with him in a fight that I do think goes to the cards here. And both fighters, I have concerns when it comes to their volume just in general. So that doesn't make me ding one side or the other anymore. So that's where I'm at with this fight. I don't think it's a great DFS fight, though. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to be lower on this fight for DFS. You know, Silikov is projecting to be nearly 30%. I understand that because, you know, of the price and his finishing props. But I think this also goes to decision. Both of these guys, like you said, super low volume. Both are dependent on a finish to make optimal. You know, neither of them is going to come out the gate and try to wrestle or grapple. Silikov will like try to wrestle if he gets in trouble, like if he gets hurt. But outside of that, yeah, this is just like a straight low volume kickboxing match. If you're playing these guys, you're hoping one of them gets hurt and finished. I just don't really see it. I think you know, bust out the age model. Silikov is 40 years old, definitely on a downward trajectory. However, I think he's slightly more durable than Canan, and he's definitely the better defensively of the two. Like, I really rate Salikov's striking defense. I think Canan is going to have trouble actually laying hands on him. But, you know, I'm not excited to play this fight for DFS. I think you got to mix it in just because both of them have durability issues. Both of them have power. It's just like the volume is troublesome for sure. I don't think a knockout is the highest probability outcome here, but you can't fully ignore it.
No, you can't ignore it. I mean, Canan's like, I view him as pretty tough guy, honestly. So yeah, he's been cold clocked before, but
I mean, he almost finished Gary. Remember that?
Dude, he's got power. Like he's
very funny.
He's got power. So that would have been great if he finished
also just
Gary, but
you know, going to decision with you know, Ricky Glenn last time out. Not great.
Not great. No, 100%. Like I agree with you 100%. So yeah, we both think it's a decision fight. I think you're on the Silikov side. I'm on the Canan side, but close fight for sure. Let's go to, we got two more fights left on the card. We got Yan Jiaonan minus 192 on DraftKings versus Tabitha Ricci here. Again, we'll start with you again on this fight. How do you see this fight going? And is there a case to be made for Ricci in this spot?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got like a straight striker versus like grappler wrestler matchup here. Obviously, Jan being the striker, Ricci being the wrestler grappler. Ricci's whole game is predicated on sort of like getting you down to the floor. And you know, Jan's weakness has been her takedown defense. Like she can be taken down, she can be controlled. The ground is definitely a problem for her. I picked Jan. The line is moving that way, and I think you know, she is just so much better on the feet than Ricci. I think if she can muster even just like some half competent takedown defense, and you know, we've seen Ricci, you know, struggle in the wrestling. Like, you know, jiu-jitsu is obviously her game. She wants to get it to the ground, but you know, we saw in the Tisha Pennington fight, you know, Pennington stuffed the vast majority of her takedowns, pieced her up on the feet. They still gave it to Ricci, which I think we both agree was pretty terrible decision.
Dumb.
Like, yeah, like pretty big robbery there, in my opinion.
Still annoys me.
You know, it's going to be a big cage, which definitely favors Jan. You know, I think she'll be able to sort of like manage the distance, keep Ricci sort of, you know, at arm's length, and just sort of like piece her up on the feet. You know, like I've been picking against Ricci for the longest time, and she's been making me pay, but I'm going back to the well here, picking Jan. I just think she's that much better on the feet, and all fights start out on the feet. So
I agree with you. And listen, Tabitha Ricci, I just like her takedowns aren't even good. And you said like that's where she wants to go. She wants to go to the ground, but her takedowns aren't even that good. Yeah. And on the feet, I mean, this is like world separating. Like Tabitha Ricci on the feet is definitely not good. She's gotten pieced up by non-strikers. You know what I mean? Kind of like girls like her, and she's getting pieced up by him. So like, yeah, I struggle to see, unless this fight just plays out completely on the ground, which, I mean, Tabitha Ricci's not Wei Li either, by the way. Like, exactly. Wei Li is a completely different beast. She can set up those takedowns, whereas Ricci, she can't really set up her takedown. Like, she can't use her striking to, like, set up her takedowns. That's not what she's doing. And like, I think she's going to have a tough time, like, getting on the inside with Jan's, like, footwork and striking. I think she's going to struggle with it here. So the question is,
massive step up in competition for Ricci.
Massive step up. The question is, do we see a finish in this fight? Because Jan at 8,800, like, could she find a finish against someone like Ricci? I mean, I think she could, honestly, but 8,800, who's in that range, Dan? You got Olberg, 8,900.
It's a really strong range.
Carlos Hernandez, Mashante, like where do you put her in that range?
I mean, just my rating. Let me see here. I've got her, you know, she's like dead last.
You gotta have her like fourth, you know, right?
From 8,800 and above, I have it like, so I've got Jan number one, because 5-round fight, obviously. Then I've got, and this is all like kind of price agnostic, because obviously, like, I got Wang Kong next, actually tied with Zhang Mingyang. So obviously I prefer Zhang Mingyang quite a bit because he's, you know, 500 cheaper. And then after that, there's a pretty significant drop off to Kavanov. Then we've got Olberg. Then we've got Feng. And then it's a large drop off to Yan Jinan. It's just, you know, the finishing numbers are like not what you want to see for, you know, Yan is plus 400 to win inside the distance. If this were a 5-round fight, you know, totally different story, but it's a 3-round fight. So
totally different. Yeah.
We got a finish, which, you know, Ricci has been pretty durable.
Manning.
Sorry, what?
Manning, right? Was it Manning the last?
Manning, who is, you know, who's massive, you know.
Could you make the case, though, that was the last time there was this much of advantage in the striking department between Ricci and who she's facing?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Man, that is like, that was.
I think that Jan at plus 450 by KO is interesting. I think it's just it's an interesting bet. It's probably a better bet than, honestly, her DFS play, right, Dan? Because I think if she gets a finish, it's probably later in the fight. Yeah. So I don't know how well it scores for DFS. And I think early in the fight, she's going to have to be like stuffing takedowns, right? She's going to have to be like a little more cautious about when she's entering because she doesn't want to get, because Ricci wants to get a hold of her, right? Because then from there, it's like that's where she can try and work her to the ground. And so I think she's going to be careful early. So I think it's a late finish. So I wonder what like a round 3 or 2 KO is, like somewhere in that like 2 to 3 range. Plus 2,000 for a round 3 KO.
That's not
I don't
bad.
hate that. I think that's a fun little bet right there. That's a fun sprinkle, 5, 10, $20, whatever you sprinkle on fights. And
yeah, without like without a specific method too, Jan, we've got plus 1,100 and plus 1,400 for round 2 and 3 respectively. So I don't hate those either. I think
we haven't talked about a lot of fun bets on this card yet, Dan. We got to at least talk about 1 or 2. That's a fun bet right there. I can get on board with that.
This is a tough betting card, I think.
I think the problem is, Dan, I see a lot of decisions on this card, to be honest.
Yeah. I picked all favorites. I don't think I've ever done that the entire time we've been
really
doing this,
you picked I didn't even notice you did that. Like we just went through almost the whole card and you picked all the favorites. I didn't even realize that. Well, I guess that's why we're on. I guess that's why we're opposite of some of these fights here, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Sejudo, but who he started out as a dog, but now he's flipped to the favorite. So yeah, I've got every.
I kind of agree with Jared. Like, if you're doing like a big parlays and stuff, you probably just want to go with the money lines and stuff like that, or the plus 3.5s, because I do think there's going to be splits and really close decision fights on this card. So like the plus 3.5 lines, if you're doing like a big parlay, I don't know if DraftKings on a couple of these cards, DraftKings was given that like 105 boost parlay for like 11 picks. Dan, I don't know if you like use those profit boots,
but never send them.
Really, they don't send them to you. I think I got it for the. I think I got it for the last fight. They didn't send it to you for the last fight?
I'm unsure.
Well, if they do send them to you, I think that's where you like take advantage of those plus 3.5, closer line fights and stuff like that. Because I kind of agree it's probably more of like a money line or plus 3.5 if you're parlaying. But we're just trying to find like a fun one-hitter type bets. And I think that's a fun that's a fun bet right there. So
yeah, I think the only other one we gave out was like if you want to hit the Diaz number live.
The Diaz fight live. Yeah.
That makes it to the second round, and Mingyang is looking good in the first round. He's very questionable outside the first round.
I mean, Volkan's another guy I'm probably gonna sprinkle plus 500 on, but because I think if he wins, he's got power.
Yeah, probably.
You would think he's not winning a decision against Carlos. I don't think, anyways. But I mean, I guess
if Olberg gasses, but if he gasses, I think he's getting finished.
Right, exactly. So it's another guy, and that's another fight where I kind of like if you can get like rounds 2 and 3 finish. I kind of like that better because I don't think he finishes them in round 1. I think if he finishes them, it's later. But those are kind of the fun bets here. Let's get to the final fight on the card, Dan. Then we can give our
gloves on this. I think it's the old gloves still, right?
I think no. So I think Dana said they completely scrapped the new gloves. So the new gloves are now the old gloves, and the old gloves are now the gloves. If that makes sense. I'm pretty sure Dana said
gloves are the new gloves.
Yes, the old gloves are back in, and the new gloves are completely out. I think from what Dana said last time. So,
yeah, I will try to confirm that. But, if we're using the old gloves, then knockouts are back, baby.
Yeah, knockouts are back for sure. I kind of felt like it on the last card, too, where guys were more going for like the KOs and stuff like it kind of felt that way to me. I don't know.
Great. Maybe I think maybe it might not even be like I think people were just uncomfortable in the new gloves.
That could be it. Well, John Jones did talk about, I think, didn't he say how like he just was uncomfortable? Yeah, he like making a fist hurt.
Yeah.
So Hey, Dan, do you have the, I'm on DraftKings right now, and I don't see the Figueiredo Jan fight up. Is that just me, or is it down right now?
Let's see.
The last one I have is the Jan Ricci fight.
Yeah, it's up.
You see it up?
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't see it up. Okay. I thought maybe they took it down for a reason or something like that. All right. Either way, we got Peter Jan 9K on DraftKings here versus Davison Figueiredo. Jan coming in. Where's he up to right now, Dan? Minus 270, minus 300. Where's he at right now?
Jan, I've got at minus 336. The
336. So the line is just going towards Jan right now here. So the question is, first, do you feel like that line is a little inflated? Do you feel like it's a little wide, or do you think Jan should be a minus 336 favorite?
It does seem a little. I mean, I'm a big Figueiredo fan. So personally, it seems wide to me. But I guess if I'm trying to look at it objectively, I think it's probably a fair line. I think Jan, like, I think he's probably got like physicality and size advantages because remember, like Figueiredo is now just coming up from flyweight. I think Jan is the much better and much more active technical striker. He's got great takedown defense. He's got great scrambles, elite cardio. He's never been knocked out. He's got great submission defense. I think Figueiredo is just probably outmatched slightly in all areas. That's not to say that I don't think he has a chance, though, because, Figueiredo's dangerous, especially he's been utilizing wrestling and jiu-jitsu a bit more recently. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he like locks up a ghillie or something on him. He's very
kind of like Jim fucking Miller.
Jim fucking Miller. That was great.
Jim fucking what a fucking guillotine right there. That arm in that dude is nasty. He is old as shit, and I know Dan hates it every time we talk about him, but he is nasty.
Oh, I love Jim Miller. What are you talking about? I love Jim.
But you hate old guy. You're an old man hater.
I picked Silikov.
How the fuck did you take Silikov? It's going against everything you believe in.
The exception that proves the rule, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, also, that reminds me. Shout out to our friend from the chat last time who was saying that I was a stupid idiot for saying that Miocic had no chance.
There you go. Get on chat.
Ass kicked.
Get on chat.
There was never,
I agree. Miocic got his ass kicked, Dan, and he not only did he get his ass kicked, but he survived 2.5 rounds, got us the over while getting his ass kicked. So he's a tough son of a bitch who got his ass kicked. We love Stipe Miocic on this show.
At no point was that fight competitive in any way.
No, I'm not saying it was competitive. I'm saying he got us the over. That's all I'm saying. He got us the damn over. I was on the over. It was plus money. I'm pretty sure it was the over 2.5, and he got us the over. So I love Stipe for that. My whole fight I thought he could survive long enough to get us that over, and he did. That's all I was saying. But you were getting shit from one person. I can't remember his name. Who was very high on Stipe
or whoever.
Yeah, Stipe's cousin. So, hey, it's all right to be wrong. That's why we do this show. We're wrong all the time on these shows. I get stuff wrong all the time. Dan doesn't pick every single fight correctly, even though, he might be close, like maybe like 85%, but, still, we don't pick all fights correctly. So, you take your L's sometimes. That guy, he might not be in the chat right now, but he should definitely take his L because he was very heavy on the Stipe side. Very, very heavy.
All right.
So Jan and Figgy, I do think Figgy can give Jan some issues. He's got good takedowns. I do think, he can give him some trouble in certain issues where he could be dangerous and everything like that. So I kind of feel like the line is a little wide. And it's where it's like, I think Peter Yan wins the fight. Yeah. I think he's the rightful favorite. I like totally agree. I just don't know if I can get on board with like minus 350 or 336 or whatever the hell you just said. Like, I think these are two very high level guys. Like Figgy is very high level. I think 7,200 for Figgy too is not a bad price tag on DraftKings. Like you get some takedowns, maybe gets you a few takedowns, and maybe it goes to decision. And who knows? Maybe Figgy wins a split decision. Like I don't think that's crazy to happen. So I don't think he's dominating. I don't think he's finishing Jan. I think Jan wins a decision, or maybe finds a late finish on Figgy even. But to me, Dan, I just feel like the line is a little wide. So if I bet anything, it'll be Figgy. But I do think Peter Yan is the rightful favorite. And I think for DFS, are you locking this fight? Because I've been back and forth on if I lock this fight. You're going to lock this fight?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll probably be pretty close to like 50-50 exposure on these guys. Maybe
sounds right.
Slightly more Yan. Ideally, I think I would like to get to slightly more Yan, but this top range is pretty stacked.
How would you rank the 9Ks then, Dan? Like, where does Jan stay? Is he just number one, or how would you rank the?
Yeah, Jan is number one. So yeah, I think we touched on this before, but I'll just do it one more time. So this is again like price agnostic. I've got it: Jan, Mingyang, Wang Kong, Kavanov, Olberg, and a big drop to Fang, and then another big drop down to Yanjinan. So,
yeah, okay, we're kind of in line. I think too. I think that's how I would probably have them too. You got Mingyang, yeah.
I think Figueiredo, like offensively, especially Figueiredo, definitely has like a wrestling and grappling advantage, but defensively, Jan is just so solid, and I'm not sure Figueiredo necessarily has the physicality to consistently get the takedown. And then, he's very like wily, dangerous submission grappler. So he absolutely could like grab a neck and lock up a choke.
100%. Yeah.
I kind of think Figgy is just going to have difficulty even getting the fight to the ground. Like, I think, when Jan fought, Merab, he defended a ton of those takedowns. He got taken down a ton because Merab is just, a whole different kind of animal. But like, again, that's Merab, and he hung with him. Let's see how many. Okay, it was 11 takedowns. So
I think Figgy early is going to be able to get takedowns. I just don't think he's going to consistently be able to get takedowns and control for the entirety of the fight.
Yeah, Jerry Stats is absolutely right here. Jan, he's got great takedown defense, and when he gets taken down, he has great get up. Like, Merab landed 11 takedowns off of 49 attempts. Like,
and that's the take. This is the take right there. Like, I think at some point, Figgy's going to end up almost like maybe gassing out a little bit if he tries to shoot that many times, which I think he's going to have to shoot a lot, because I agree with Jerry that Jan's takedown or Jan's get up game is very, very good. And he's had really good practice in the ring already, because he's had to do this already. So and I just don't think I don't even think Figgy's going to try the volume game. I think early he might have some success, but I think the more they get sweaty and the later this goes, it's going to be tougher and tougher for him to get Jan to the ground. And I think that's where Jan really pulls away from him in those later kind of exchanges. I could even see Figgy winning the early round or two, but like Jan winning the last three clearly and like obviously.
The one like big knock on Jan is that he is a bit of a slow starter. So yeah, I think you could definitely see him drop an early round.
And again, that's when they're dry. That's the best time to get takedowns, right? Early in fights when they're dry, and you can so I think Figgy's going to try, because Figgy's going to try and, use that grappling to his advantage. And I just don't think it's going to happen.
Well, and pay attention to the live number too, because this number, I'm never really too enthused about betting like minus 300 favorites, because I also don't really like mess with parlays and shit like that. So I think if you want to bet Jan, it's possible he drops the first round, and you could get a better price on him live. Yeah, I don't hate hitting the Jan number.
I think you'd have to drop like 2 rounds for you to get like a real decent number or something like that. But yeah, either way, it's a good call by you, because he does start slow. Jerry said in the chat, trying to pick up on stuff, and he'll drop some rounds. So yeah, it's an interesting fight. I think we both have Jan winning. Do you have Jan winning a decision, or do you have him winning by finish?
I have him by decision.
Yeah, me too. That's what I have too. But later round wouldn't shock me if you found a way. So, all right, those are all 13 fights on this card. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Hope you hit the like button. RPS 15 is still the promo code, 15% off your first month or weekly, depending on what you want to do. Check it out. We've got one for all sports. You can get single sport packages as well if you're just looking for, NBA or NFL, MMA, PGA, whatever it is. We got single sport packages, not just the full package. So check us out. That code RPS15 for 15% works for any of those packages. And like I said, it works for a month, or if you just want to try it out for a week. So check us out here. Hit the like button on the YouTube video. If you're not going to sign up, just hit that thumbs up. We appreciate it. It's free content. I'll be back at 3 p.m. Eastern with Big T and ODB for the NFL Print Factory show. So stay tuned for the NFL stuff. And Dan, before we get out of here, you got to give your favorite bet on the card. I'll give mine as well, but favorite bet.
All right. So yeah, I think my favorite bet on this card is actually Jan and Figgy fight to go to decision, and that's minus 150. If you want to bet a side, though, well, I'll let you go. And if I don't want to steal yours.
No, go. Do it.
Okay. I think I like Jan in this fight a lot. I think this fight goes to decision, so I think Jan by decision plus 125 is a good bet as well.
I like it. All right. There we go. Your top bet. My favorite bet, me just looking through this here real quick. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. But so I'm gonna give a dog here. I'm gonna say Nicholas Mota finds the finish here. Nicholas, this is one of those fights that I don't think sees the cards. I think a lot of fights see the cards here. This is one fight I think doesn't. Here's plus 300 by KO. I think if he wins by KO. Like if you like Mota, I think he wins by KO. I think Mahashante might have him in like the volume department if this did go all 3 rounds, which I don't think it does. So if you like this fight and you like one side, I would recommend the KO button here. But I like Mota plus 300. I think is a good number for someone like him, who I kind of view as KO or kind of bust. So that's going to do it here for the show, guys. Again, enjoy the 3 a.m. wake up time. I'll be looking for whoever the degenerates are in the MMA Discord at Run Pure Sports. So we'll see you guys, or I'll see you at 3 a.m. for Dan and myself, JSU. Come back for the Print Factory show, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Till then, we're out of here.